Hey, Stephen Key here. Part 2 of how to take an idea from a sketch on a napkin to full production, selling in stores. And I just interviewed the president of the company, Jason. He came on, he talked a little bit about the very beginning. And now we have Nate. Nate, say the name of the company again because it's a mouthful and I'm having a hard time even saying it.
Yeah, no problem. So we have Klugonics, which is our development side of the company. We do production, or we do development, design, engineering. And then we have Onyx 360, which is our sister company, which handles the manufacturing.
Okay. And that kind of lands on your desk, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so we do a lot of the production and manufacturing that and support our clients after Jason's teams works with them.
Okay. So where do you produce? Is it just in China or do you produce other places in the world? Is it just in China?
So a large portion of our stuff is in China. If we have really technical products, we're talking like carbon fibers and electronics and those type of things. A lot of it stays in China. Um, then we do a lot of cut and sew, backpacks, things outside in Vietnam, Bangladesh. We've got some shoes in Bangladesh as well, even some products in Taiwan.
Okay. Wow, let's talk about living over there. Do you live over there half the time to take these projects and magically make them look good?
Yeah, so I live there full time. I have my wife who is American and our 7 kids, and we live in China.
Well, that must be really exciting, I guess. Are you? Oh, well, let me turn that off. Um, wow, what an experience for the family.
Yeah, it's been an adventure.
So tell me, what is it like taking a product and working with the factory over there? Is it something you're really comfortable with? Is it sitting down with their engineers and taking those drawings, whatever you have, and really making this come to life? Is that an area that you're pulling out your hair? Do you get it right? Do you get it wrong? How much back and forth do you go?
Yeah, so it's we try and stay really tight to processes. There's always a little bit of a messy point when you first get started. As Jason alluded to a few times, it's really important to understand some of the manufacturing limitations beforehand, so that you can get your product aligned. It makes a lot of things go smoother and simpler. We've had situations where some of our clients have done a lot of the legwork themselves, and they've come to us because they've hit walls with the manufacturing side, and we've had to re-engage with them and help them develop and get more aligned with the existing manufacturing structures. Um, there are times when we're pulling our hair out, but a lot of the time, if we stick to process and keep working through it, we get it and we nail it really well. We've had a few projects where, like some of the backpack projects we've done, we've developed and designed, developed, and sampled within 3 to 4 months, uh, ending in production in less than 6 months. And so if we do it right, we can go really, really fast.
Okay, let's talk about a pre-production sample. Um, I've been working with your company from the very beginning. Now that prototype I saw early on, we're going in production. It goes over to you. Your team's looking at it. When do I get that pre-production? When do I get that one sample to sign off going, hey, I love this, Nate. This is what I want. When does that happen and what is that process?
Yeah, so the pre-production sample is interesting. It really depends on the type of technology we're using. It depends on the product category. Pre-production samples for backpacks and soft goods happen very quickly. We can get pre-production stuff done in less than a month.
All right.
If we're doing injections, I highly recommend doing prototypes beforehand, especially with multiple components. And there's always an education phase where the factories, when they get involved, it takes them a little bit of time to start wrapping their own heads around it.
All right.
And that's really where a lot of our strength is we will work through with the factory through that phase, because Jason and his team and the clients that we've worked with, they've been with their projects for sometimes multiple years, and they have all this background knowledge and experience. And we have to make sure, in order for things to move forward smoothly with the factory, that the factory gets that same level of knowledge and experience, and we can plug them in easily. So I would say, from a time standpoint, we can be as little as 1 month. Sometimes we've even done it in 2 weeks, depending on the product. Whereas, some we've got a few Kickstarter programs where we've worked with them for over 6 to 8 months. Usually pre-production is following tooling. So there is a tooling investment that comes about, and following the tooling and the development that's needed before that. Then that tooling will shoot a pre-production sample off of that tool.
Okay, so once I've got it, I look at it, I like it. Jason likes it too. We all love this thing. It looks really good. It does exactly what we want it to do. You start production up. Is there a minimum quantity that I have to order?
Yeah, MOQ, we call it the MOQs. You'll see that slang thrown around. But the MOQ, or minimum order quantity, really plays into materials. So, like if I'm doing a blanket, there's no tooling when I do a blanket or a backpack for the most part. But they do have higher MOQs because they have to buy the material. MOQs come into play too with injection products. So if I'm doing an injection toy or a baby product, they have to purchase the plastics, and there's also a minimum order quantity because of the amount of time and energy that it takes to set up the machines and then run the machines. So if you're looking at plastics, your MOQ is usually, if you've got a partner factory, we can hit about 1,000 to 1,500 pieces. Most factories like to see a minimum of 3,000, and they're comfortable anywhere above that. If you're doing apparel and cut and sew, you can look as low as 500. And then depending on how you engineer your product and whether or not you're using existing materials or existing components, sometimes we can get a little bit lower. Most factories, if they are working with, clients that have a substantial base, they're used to running sales samples. But yeah, that MOQ usually starts around 1,000.
Okay. So let's say I order my first 1,000, but something goes a little wrong. I get them and they're not quite the same. Does that happen very often, and what do you do about it?
It doesn't happen with us, but we do have clients that happens to all the time. One of the things that Jason alluded to, the transparency. Some of our clients get overwhelmed if they get exposure to the transparentness of what's going on. We do it because we don't just expose them to the transparency, but we also help provide support and solutions. And we have a policy that nothing ships and no payment happens unless the product meets quality control standards. And so part of our onboarding process, when Jason's teams finishes and before the factory gets too deep, we create quality standards and performance standards that are needed. We had, like you were mentioning, the snorkel device before. So there's quality standards in that product that require that the valves stay open for a certain period of time. And then the factory is required to test those periodically to make sure that the product maintains that level of quality. And we do a final inspection at the end to confirm that those standards were met. And we'll periodically stop by the factories as well.
Okay. So it's really great to have someone in the factory managing and watching everything, is it, Nate? How important is that?
It's critical. It's the main reason why I'm here, honestly. So we have so many situations where the language barrier and the cultural value system, that's not necessarily good or bad, it's just different, gets in the way of people's goals and desires. And so it's really critical for us to engage and get in there and facilitate and make sure that the customer's expectations and quality execution is maintained.
Okay. One last question. You always hear these stories about, you find a manufacturer over in someplace over in other parts of the world, and next thing you know, that manufacturer is selling the product out the back door. How do you stop that?
This is probably going to be the thing you don't want to hear, but you don't stop it. You anticipate it is maybe the way I would come at it. there's things you can do, but we have clients that have gotten IP in China and in America, where they've worked with partners that aren't really interested in strong client relationships, and the partners end up selling it and licensing it to Russia, and or distributing through tons of e-commerce channels. And because there's so many layers in between the supplier and the e-commerce sale and the customer that buys it on the e-commerce side, that they just kind of say, well, it's not my fault, I don't have control of that. So usually what we talk with our customers is we definitely say, hey, look, IP is important, especially if you've got something that's unique, that's going to change the market. Even if it's, if it's simple enough where the factories can copy it, we work with our clients to build IP, and then we help them understand the road ahead as well, to say, okay, well, you're going to be developing your product now. There potential that even if our suppliers are really good, lots of our suppliers we worked for many years, we trust them, they trust us. But there's situations where suppliers are always watching the market. I know, Kickstarter is a big one of those. Every time I always tell people when they're doing Kickstarter, that's great, do it. It's a great way to promote yourself. Just remember that people watch it, and even non-suppliers watch it. And you have to anticipate and understand that as soon as you go out there, you're going to have competition. So from my standpoint, the IP helps protect, it helps support, but you also have to shore up your business from a business standpoint. Make sure you understand what your launch timelines are and keep the product flowing. Suppliers are about easy money, and development and engineering is not easy. And so that's one of the biggest ways that a lot of our clients stay ahead, is they just keep things moving, and it's hard for people to catch up.
Yeah, I would agree. Keep on innovating. How important is to come up with something that's so unique from the manufacturing standpoint that it stops it?
It's hard. You've mentioned a few times about small businesses that have IP, and then Jason, has mentioned a few about the large businesses. And there's a little bit of trade-off that can happen, because when you develop new innovative products, sometimes that means you're developing new innovative manufacturing techniques. And that can be expensive, and it can be time-consuming. And it can be doable, and it can be what you want to do. And there's other situations where you don't want to do that. Like we have one client that does about 4 million a year in revenue. She's got about 20 something employees, plus warehouse and all those things. And she came up with some products, and we sat down with her and said, look, like maybe we can innovate just enough, where we can come in with the manufacturing. We're working with the supplier within their existing manufacturing techniques, and also evolving it a little bit so that it doesn't make it really easy. But we're not going into that deep hole of, well, let's build brand new machines that have never done this before.
All right.
And then we're engineering machines, and we're engineering processes and all that kind of stuff. We can become very, very messy.
All right. Nate, great information. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll follow up with this because this is fascinating. But Nate, thank you very much for coming on InventRight TV. Everyone, subscribe down below. If you want if you've got an idea that you need some help, check these guys out. They know exactly what they're doing from front end to back end. They even got a guy out there watching your back, Nate, over in China. Once again, this is Stephen Key. Thanks for watching.